Bookworms, I know we do a lot of apologizing in our videos, and I really wish we didn't have to do it so much, but more or less life has just kind of caught up with both me and Victoria. If you follow my vlog channel, Sib Vids, link down below, you'll see that we just moved to Indianapolis. Cody just got a new job. We've been planning a wedding. I've been changing my name. And of course, I'm back to job hunting. So I would like to apologize from the bottom of my heart. We are very sorry we haven't created any new content lately. Now that I'm just job hunting, I have plenty of time to work on content. So that's what I'm gonna be doing for a little bit, as long as I don't have too much going on. And even when I do, I will continue to make content because this is what I enjoy doing. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna get a job that will let me do what I enjoy doing. So this is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a really long time. And both Victoria and I have both talked about doing a collaboration or something. But I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because it's been so long and I have been dying to talk about it. Also, it's a subject near and dear to us millennials and 90s kids, so I figured it'd be a great way to start off this new era of Bookworm Bibliophile reviews. And that, my friends, is the Harry Potter series. Now, what I want to focus on specifically are adaptations. Which movies that we should probably give a little more slack to because they actually did a pretty good job, and which movies you can go ahead and hate on because, let's be real, they didn't capture the essence of the book at all. Victoria and I have differing views, so I'm sure at one point she's going to make a video on her opinions on Harry Potter because it's very interesting coming from the two different perspectives. Now, in order to get started, I think I do need to explain a little bit of my history with Harry Potter because it does influence to an extent exactly why I feel the way I do about the movies. Now, if I remember correctly, it was back in about 4th grade when I saw friends reading the Harry Potter series, and for some reason I was a little bit of a hipster and didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to become a bandwagon fan. I was just gonna let everybody else read it and, you know, tell me how it was. But I'll never forget the night my dad brought home a DVD from Blockbuster because one of his coworkers thought that, you know, my dad's kids might like it. And it was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. From that moment on, I was obsessed. The movie created such beautiful magic and I was so immersed that within a few days, I was down at the library renting the books on my own. Now, if I remember correctly, I didn't read them in order. Part of that is because I did see the movie and I know for a fact the Sorcerer's Stone wasn't available when I went to the library. But I definitely believe that me seeing the movie first did form certain opinions about the series. Now, that doesn't completely translate onto the rest of the movies, but we'll get to that when we talk about each movie's adaptation. Now, the biggest thing that I want to stress in this review is that adaptations are hard, especially when it's a series as beloved as Harry Potter. I mean, there's a reason that George R.R. Martin didn't want Game of Thrones to be made into movies, and he turned down several offers until HBO was able to make a complete series. He wanted it to be a line-for-line remake as much as possible. Now, not all authors have that kind of integrity or desire to make sure that it's perfect. And especially a series like Harry Potter, sometimes sacrifices have to be made. So let's go ahead and start. The Sorcerer's Stone. I'll never forget talking to my husband on one of our first couple dates about Harry Potter movies, and I remember him specifically saying how much he hated Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone when it first came out. He thought that the movie had taken way too much out of the book. Now, over time, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone as a movie has become probably the favorite of both mine and his. Why is that? To put it succinctly, I would say it's because the first movie created the Harry Potter atmosphere. I mean, sure, there were plenty of things that got left out. Specifically, I remember talking to my husband and he was upset that they took out that scene where one of the professors catches Harry with his broom and Harry says, "Oh, it's all thanks to Malfoy that I've got it." Or when Draco tries to get Harry in more trouble by, you know, putting them against each other in a wizard's duel. Now, those scenes weren't necessary in the movie. Since film is such a visual medium, there were things that we could see about Draco Malfoy in the movie that those scenes in the book set up for Draco's character. In the book, those scenes were fun. Would they have been a lot of fun in the movie? Absolutely. But they really weren't necessary. So instead, what we got with The Sorcerer's Stone was a very linear movie where the story followed the adventures of the trio, and it turned out great. Chris Columbus as a director made such beautiful choices, making the atmosphere just magical. The Diagon Alley scene is one of my all-time favorites. Why? Well, because that's what sets up the wizarding world. You know, there's so much in the books that describe Hogwarts and Diagon Alley as these beautiful, magical places. And we saw those come to life in the movie. Later on, we'll talk about how certain things like Quidditch got cut, but the first movie kept that in. It was definitely more succinct than it was in the book, but you still got the feeling of this sport, and he did a fantastic job. There's not much else I can say about the first movie other than praise. I think they did a fantastic job. And moving on to The Chamber of Secrets, which is one where I read the book first, I honestly have the same opinion. It's the same director, which helps a lot. And the little things that got left out weren't as big of a deal. Chris Columbus still made a magical world. And that's the important part, especially for the first two movies, I think. This world felt like a real world, and it had a coherent storyline. And to be honest, that's really all I have to say about The Chamber of Secrets. It's not my favorite movie of the bunch, but I think it follows the book well enough that adaptation-wise, it worked out really well. And then we get to The Prisoner of Azkaban. And the movies took a huge turn for the worse. I have to admit, this is my favorite book of the series. So I am extremely biased in that aspect, but I will try to keep my bias out of the review. This movie is not the worst movie for me out of the 8 movies, but it's still, it gets on my nerves. Now, when it comes to the actual storyline, I really can't complain. They did a great job of following the trio and really keeping pretty close to the book. Now, what helps with that is that The Prisoner of Azkaban was the last of the smaller novels. After that, we started getting into huge Harry Potter books. So it was a lot easier to stay within the confines of the story. So kudos to you, Prisoner of Azkaban. You did one thing right. No, the sin here is that all of the magic that Chris Columbus worked so hard to create for Harry Potter was completely dropped in this movie. And that's what annoys me the most. Probably the worst thing is that they took away all of the wizards wearing wizard clothes. I mean, okay. I get that this is, what, I think early 90s, early mid 90s, so I'm sure that teenage witches and wizards have stock clothes, like jeans. They really got rid of most of the school uniforms in this movie, which is really frustrating because that's a huge part of why the movie was so great and made the world a real world. It's because as soon as you take away the wizard clothes, it goes back to real life. Now I realize we're still walking around Hogwarts, we're still in this magical environment, but that's a huge part of the environment is what they're wearing. And I'm sorry, Ron should have nothing more than a sweater that his mom made for him that has a big R on the front and maybe jeans. I mean, okay, if you're gonna make Ron dress up in anything else, you really need to show Hermione with like a J. Crew magazine or something and helping him find clothes, because there's no explanation for it. And it's especially the Weasleys that get on my nerves because these people live in the magical world. They aren't constantly, well, okay, Arthur Weasley is constantly dealing with muggles. The rest of them aren't, so they should always be a little mismatched. Now, I know that was a big rant on the clothes, but that's not the only thing. The movie also gets significantly darker. Now, I know that the movies are supposed to get darker as they go on, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the darkest, Chamber of Secrets was like a 2, and this jumped to an 8. And I know that's the style of the director, but it didn't need to go that crazy, especially because this is the only movie of the series that doesn't have anything to do with Voldemort. His name is mentioned here and there because of Peter Pettigrew and Sirius Black and the killing of Harry's parents, but he is not directly involved in this story. So this story should have been, I don't know, more in the gray area. There was no reason that it had to be so dark. And then there's all the things that they added in, like the talking head on the night bus, or the Whomping Willow hitting a little bird, or the fat lady just singing. Those things aren't funny. I mean, I don't know if you laughed, but they went with the director's theme of the movie. It didn't go with the series. There really was no reason. The only thing that was, the only thing that kind of went with the theme was the Monster Book of Monsters. And guess what? That was in the book! I will say the only thing that they added that wasn't in the book, that they added to the movie, was all the boys sitting around in the dormitory eating candy. Why? It shows them being children. You have to remember, these actors are all getting older, but these characters are 13. I mean, they're still kids. So that was a great way to show them interacting with the other students and not just being focused on the trio. They interacted with other students, they were having fun, they were doing something magical, because that candy is still magical even if it's kind of silly, and it worked. So good job for one good extra scene. And to top it all off, which I know is not fair, but Dumbledore sucks. Rest in peace, Richard Harris. You were the perfect Dumbledore. Because Dumbledore is strong and elegant and quiet. Michael Gambon, I realize that you were thrown into a role that basically already had the perfect person and you were just the fill-in. But your Dumbledore wasn't Dumbledore. I mean, there's a reason that that meme came out that says, you know, Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? Dumbledore doesn't do that. Dumbledore does not act that way. His performance may have been a little bit more human, and I did read a couple interviews that said that was his goal, which is great. But he's not the cool professor trying to connect with the students, which is really a lot of the impression I got when he was trying to tell them about the time turner. No, this was the wrong choice for Dumbledore. As an actor, I can appreciate that Michael Gambon was trying to do his own take on the character. It didn't work, man. And that's a big reason why this adaptation didn't work. It was the wrong character. It wasn't Dumbledore on the screen. We definitely got the feeling that your Dumbledore was edgier, which, okay, great. But screw you and screw the director for making your choices, because that was not Dumbledore. That's the end of this Bookworm Bibliophile review, so make sure to tune in to see what my opinion is on the adaptation from book to movie. As always, keep reading, bookworms!